Hello, I'm Eric Nierstedt, author of the Pantheon Saga, and tonight begins a special reading of my holiday tale, A Child Shall Lead, which can be found in my short story collection, Spider Stories, Tales of the Silent Pantheon, which is available on Amazon.com. So let's begin. It is said that Christmas in New York City is unlike any other Christmas. That much is true. Christmas is different whenever it's celebrated. There may be paper bags with candles inside lighting a dark street. There may be smells of turkey or ham or fish coming from any number of houses. Some go to Mass at the stroke of midnight on Christmas Eve, while others sleep in eagerness for the coming day. Some offer their praise. Some sit with their loved ones before television for a story of Christmas they have seen many times before. Cities are lit with different colors of lights, and evergreen trees stand tall. Small towns gather at a square for fellowship and food. All of these things and a thousand more are Christmas in the world. And New York is no exception. The great tree at Rockefeller Center, lit brightly enough to gather men and women from across the city, the river, and the states beyond. The shows that pull those same people, that tell of Christmas in song and dance and old stories made new again. The department stores lined with tinsel and red and green, and jolly men in red waiting to hear the wishes of children. Songs sung from bars and from the streets, echoing joy and goodwill in a city that can be as forgetful about those things as any other. Great steel buildings alit with red and green, and messages of peace and brotherhood. Perhaps, if you're lucky enough, you've even seen the snow at this time, covering the city in a blanket of white and diamond. However, that is not the Christmas we are here to see. No, our Christmas takes place in the heart of the city, beyond all the things that make New York Christmas special. For while they are all unique, there is one thing this city has that no other place does. It has taken place for some time now, and this year it takes place once again, for the first time, at a bar in the middle of Manhattan. It is closed for one of the few times of the year, yet it is not empty. One waits inside, to be joined by others for a most unusual Christmas gathering. The crow's nest sat empty, the chairs up on all the tables but one. That one table was the largest within the bar, wide and spacious to seat at least 10 people. And indeed, it was set for such a gathering, with the chairs around it. Plates and utensils were set at each chair, waiting to be used. Yet only one stood in the whole bar that night that might use it, and she was not in a mood to do so. "Can't believe I let them talk me into this," Molly O'Shea muttered as she stood behind the bar, pouring the last of 6 glasses. Some contained beer, others wine. One even had tea in it. An observer would have not understood serving an empty bar, but there was more going on here than a normal observer would imagine. "One day of the year to rest and sleep through. Is that too much to ask?" Molly muttered as she set the last glass upon the table. "Oh no, you had to come and take me beer and me wine. Even ask for food. Swear, there are times I wish I was still alone with your crazy..." A knock upon the door drove Molly from her thoughts. Sighing, she went to the door and put her ear to it, and then spoke. "Sethagan kul demeras. Venir si kulda." Molly opened the door wide, letting in a burst of cold air. She shivered, but stepped back as those outside hurried into the warmth of the bar. "Freezing weather, isn't it?" Molly asked, as her guests tried to take in the warmth. "Almost makes you want to stay home." "Actually, I enjoyed it," Martin said as he removed his coat. "The city reminds me of home this time of the year more than any other." "Why doesn't that surprise me?" Sandy asked, his teeth just beginning to stop chattering. "I don't see why you couldn't just come here right away," Molly said. "Seems a waste to open the door when you could just be right here." "It's impolite to just show up," Andrea said, rubbing her hands together for warmth, "even for our kind." "She may have a point, though," Kamala said, brushing the snow off herself. "It is a bitter cold this year." "I've seen worse," Jane said as she looked around the bar. "Not much of a decorator, I see." "Come in on St. Patrick's Day," Molly said. "Only saint that ever did me any good. But today I don't bother. Not like this day did any good for me anyway." "It's not his fault," Andrea said. "No one can help when they're born, or what people do about it." "No, but it is what it is," Molly said. "I still think you're crazy for even doing this. This day should be one of the worst for us." "We don't celebrate this for him," Martin said. but we can at least pay our respects. He deserves that much, doesn't he? Molly sighed, but replied, I suppose he did some good for us down the road, and for them. And this is still a good day for other reasons, Kamala said. We celebrate family and joy and goodwill and humanity. We celebrate another year we have survived, Andrea said. And, hell, I just come for the food, Sani said. We did add beer this year, right? I mean, we're in a bar. It kind of seems pointless not to. Molly rolled her eyes, but still smiled a bit. Jane chortled and said, hey, so far that's all I've got to go on, too. Christmas wasn't that much fun for me, either. Midnight mass. Ugh. And terrible food for my aunt. Not like what my dad could cook. Then this will be a good one, Martin said, squeezing Jane's hand. So shall we begin? Jane nodded, as the group of men and women came together in a circle. They linked hands, and as they did, the lights gleamed even brighter across the bar. What sounds there were stopped. The beer stopped fizzing in the glasses, and even those outside the window seemed frozen in place. And then Martin spoke. We are the old ones. We are ancient and true, gathered together on this day beyond the solstice of winter. We come together near the ending of the year to celebrate what has been, to honor those that have aided us, and to honor each other. So as it was then, let it be once more. Let no mortal ears or mortal eyes gleam this celebration, this tribute to the voices of old. The lights dimmed as Martin's words echoed, then faded. The beer fizzed, and the people outside began to move again. As the words had said, they did not look inside the bar or even seem to notice it. And perhaps that was just as well. For if they were to look inside the bar, on this day when the Son of God was born, they would see arguments to his divine supremacy. For the group of men and women were gone. In their place were beings that had been born upon man's lips when he looked to the world and felt fear. They had comforted him and protected him, and in return, he had given his belief, at least for a time. After all, that was the way of gods. All is prepared, Balder said, as he looked upon the table. Allow me to begin the tribute. The god of the dawn waved his hand towards the table. There was a flash of light, and then steaming dishes of food appeared. Boiled potatoes, meatballs, and a platter of fish filled the air with their smells. Balder looked upon the table with pride, and then walked over and placed a bottle at the end. The Valhalla ale? Loki asked. I felt it appropriate, Balder replied. Even if we do not celebrate as the mortals do, this is still a time for family. Odin would only want family to share his drink. Well said, Athena replied. In fact, I have something of my own then. The Olympian waved her own hand, and more food appeared upon the table. A small platter of baked lamb, potatoes cradling its weight, as well as a tray of moussaka. Athena nodded in satisfaction, and then reached within her robes and removed a vial of her own, liquid gold sloshing inside. She placed it next to Balder's bottle. Ambrosia, she said, the lifeblood of Olympus. I thought that was all gone, Balder had said. I kept some. I have not had it in centuries, but tonight seems like the right night, I think. Balder nodded as the blue form of Kali came forth. The great mother of the Hindus waved her many arms, as plates of chicken tikka and crisp panipuri appeared next to the food. Kali waved one arm a final time, and a great container appeared next to the ale and the ambrosia. Soma, Kali said, not from the gods directly, but sacred all the same. Not bad, Coyote replied as he patted forth, but look what I brought. The trickster looked upon the table and growled as his contributions came into view. A platter of warm Navajo fry bread, a bowl of corn, and a bowl of ground mutton came from nothing, as Coyote sat back and grinned. Now isn't that a feast? It is, Athena said. The same as it was last year when you brought it. Why mess with the classic? Athena rolled her eyes, while Balder and Kali just smiled, as the two newest members of their pantheon came forth for their contributions. Morrigan looked upon the table, blinked, and a large pot of hot stew full of beef and potatoes and carrots appeared bubbling in the center. Not going to get more Irish than that, she said. And since I brought the beer too, I'll consider me contributions done. Balder nodded as the final member came forth. Loki raised up his hand, snapped his fingers, and 3 small jets of flame erupted from the table. They vanished in seconds, leaving red beans and rice, jambalaya, and Creole shrimp. Loki grinned his crooked smile at the contribution, even though the others seemed confused. Do they cook that in Scandinavia? Coyote asked. No, Balder said. Loki, it smells delicious, but you took the good foods already, Loki said. Besides, the food from Jane's people is more interesting. Much more spice and fire to it. He does have a point, Cully said. Balder nodded and said, very well, let's enjoy. The gods moved over to the great table and sat down to their feast. As they began to take food and drink, Morgan glanced at 2 chairs sitting in the corner. No other guests tonight, then. Joshua said he was unable to leave, Athena said. This is a very important day in heaven, so the angels celebrate and pray the whole day through. Yeah, just as well, Coyote said, as Kali placed a loaded plate before him. He'd probably just bring that mana stuff. Or, is today the day when they eat? No, that's Easter, Athena said, and that's a metaphor. They don't actually eat him. Hey, weirder things have happened. They broke down a wall with bad horn music or something. Regardless, Joshua is never available, Balder said, and Mustafa, he chooses not to. Why? He won't say. Every year we invite him, and every year he stays home. I hope someday he'll change his mind, but it doesn't look like it'll be tonight. The street's light shone down as he huddled in the alley. He could feel the cold winds blowing against him, cutting through his coat and hat and gloves. He shivered, even though the cold let him ignore the pain in his belly. If only he'd thought to grab food when he... No, there was no point in thinking about that place. He couldn't go back. Wouldn't go back. They'd lied to him, forgotten about all that mattered. Nothing was worth going back to after that. Besides, things weren't all bad. He could catch the train somewhere else, find other people that wouldn't lie to him. And if he didn't, so what? He didn't need anybody. Not anymore. Not ever again. Clink. Clank. He looked up at the sound, even as the smell filled his nostrils. He tried not to retch at it, a smell of burnt chestnuts and spoiled ham. And yet there was something else, something that he had never smelled in the city before. Freshly cut wood. As he inhaled the smells, a shadow fell across the alleyway. He gasped as he looked upon it, saw how big and ugly and misshapen it was. Slowly he turned his head to look at what it could cast such a horrible shadow. Until next time.